And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Probably not. Roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside FD off. Bring in FD off. It's orange!
Orange 25! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Tingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
There's methane to be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. Keep red. We don't need any more of these.
Good evening. You are taking a look at two different live pictures here tonight. On the left, Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where SpaceX is getting ready to launch 23 more internet satellites on the 6-34 mission. Meanwhile, on the right, you can see down in Starbase, Texas, where Booster 10 is currently inside the chopsticks there, which we expect to grab and lift onto the Orbital Launch Mount, all within about the same time span here. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I will be your host through this dual stream, I guess, our double events, 2-for-1 sale going on here. And of course, I am not alone. I am joined by Alex. How's it going, Alex?
I'm doing great. This mixes two things that I'm really interested in. We have Falcon 9 on one side, and then the star of the show, obviously Starlink, and Booster 10.
Oh yeah, and that. Also with us tonight is Trevor. How's it going, Trevor?
Yeah, certainly can't complain. It's awesome. This will be already the 88th Falcon mission of the year, and then of course Flight 3 hardware on the right, so it's an exciting time to be a space fan.
And as you can see the countdown clock in the top left counting down towards that Starlink mission, which means we do have our team out in the field for that as well. Julia is on commentary for us tonight from Cape Canaveral. How's it going, Julia?
Well, hey there, Sawyer. I do want to extend my deepest apologies for the Florida weather, but I am very much looking forward to a return of Launchapalooza here on the coast.
Exactly. And providing that camera to you on the left is Max, who will be tracking the launch for us this evening. And the person who will be helping to switch between all of these different camera angles and keep an eye on all the action will be Patrick. So just want to note all of the people that will be with us here tonight. So let's start off here with the Starlink launch. We have a tweet from SpaceX saying, all systems are looking good and weather is currently favorable for tonight's launch of 23 Starlink satellites from Florida. So I think now would be a good time, Trevor, if you could just give us a quick rundown of what this mission is.
Yeah, of course. So for those who are regular viewers of ours, you guys know the drill with these Starlink missions these days. As usual for these Starlink Group 6 launches, this will be launching 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites into a 285 by 294 kilometer orbit. The satellites will then raise their orbit over the coming weeks to that 530 kilometer circular orbit at 43 degrees. The booster supporting today's mission is fairly new. Julia will talk about more about that in a second, and we'll be landing downrange on a Shortfall of Gravitas. The Droneship will be stationed about 628 kilometers downrange, with fairing recovery occurring roughly 700 kilometers downrange. And for those who may have been tracking the SpaceX launches with us, this is the Starlink mission that was supposed to launch on the order of a week ago with the Falcon Heavy doubleheader. And then both of those missions got pushed back, Falcon Heavy for hardware reasons, and then the Starlink mission due to weather. And now that weather seems to have cleared, and SpaceX is go for this launch tonight, with weather being 40% go last I checked.
60% go. But again, as we just saw from that tweet there, everything is looking good and weather is currently favorable. Speaking of those marine assets, Julia, if you could help fill us in a little bit more on our booster tonight and everyone that's helping out in the waters downrange.
All right. Well, as you said, it is a shortfall of Gravitas tonight, which will be our landing zone, 629 kilometers downrange. And Bob will be just a little bit farther south, ready to receive those fairings. Now, our booster tonight is booster 1081. This will be its third flight. Fun fact, this will be the first time it makes a landing in the Atlantic, as Flight 1 was SpaceX Crew 7 launch with LZ-1 landing, and then the next one was a CRS-29 mission, so again, another LZ landing. So this one's going to get its sea legs tonight.
I like describing it like that, the sea legs tonight.
Can I also hit another stat? It's a sad stat, but we kind of sort of mentioned that this flight had been delayed for about a week, which means that this is going to be the longest time between two SpaceX launches this year. They have never had this year more than 10 days between launches, and I think this is like 11 days since the previous launch. So yeah, it's a sad stat, but it's a stat for this launch, I guess.
Which means I haven't had a selfie in port in a while, and we haven't seen two boosters in port at the same time in as many days.
It also means that the crew out there at the ocean haven't been back home for a while. So,
well, yeah,
I mean,
no,
or at least the hardware, I guess.
Yeah. Let's just say that the final integration team that would normally be working on the boosters had some extended time off.
That's a way to put it. There you go. And yes, we need more selfies with boosters and Christmas hats, Julia, from you for sure.
Right now, Max has the Christmas hat, so maybe he'll take a picture of himself in that. We'll see.
Oh, if Chad asks enough, we can make almost anything happen. Anyway, while we have it there, you see the Falcon 9 and the Starlink mission continuing to count down at T-minus 33 minutes or so and counting. I do want to bring in Alex here to talk about Booster 10 and the OLM of why this is so unique and why we're actually keeping an extra close eye on this to learn a bunch from this lift.
Yeah, so this is such a weird coincidence, right? That there's so many activity with the SpaceX. It's actually not a coincidence. I'm trying to be sarcastic, but yeah. So we have there Booster 10. That's going to be the booster for the third flight of a Starship. That almost seems kind of impossible in my brain. It's mind-blowing that we're already seeing the preparations for the third flight of a Starship a little bit over a month since that second flight of a Starship happened, with gorgeous 33 inches running and everything. So we're really right now waiting for that lift of Booster 10 being lifted on the Orbital Launch Mount. There's some preparations that we will need to see, like the quick disconnect arm is still against the tower, for example, which means that maybe the lift is not right away, or maybe they're gonna lift a bit and then retract the QD arm. It's kind of confusing. We also have a new transporter for boosters. It's sort of a new version of the transporter for these boosters that has a lot of new systems and new fancy stuff on it, like the clamps, for example, don't need to be manually unclamp. I guess that's the word, right? And so they can do that remotely. They can also retract the arms on the clamps and everything also remotely. There's a lot of things that are new with this booster stand that may change the way that we see this lift compared to previous lifts. But otherwise, once the booster is off the transport stand, the rest will more or less be the same. What I'm looking forward, though, is the testing of this booster, which may even be this week. Who knows?
There we go. It's exciting. And I'm sure I've been seeing all the comments, hearing all the venting going on there as well. And again, right now, that is the venting from Starbase, Texas, which is the big picture that you currently see on your screen. And in the picture-in-picture on the top right there, that is the one down in Cape Canaveral, at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. We should not expect a major vent from there, until the T-minus 20-minute, 20-second mark. So, and of course, we'll talk about the best vent as we get closer to said best vent. And a reminder, if you have questions for either of these missions, normally we try and keep it to one topic, but we got two different ones tonight. Make sure you tag us at NASA Spaceflight, and we will do our best to answer as many of them as we can. And hopefully we will see two things lift, just one of them lift off on its own. I want to take a second here to thank a few people who have already been giving us support. Even before we went live, RC Horseman giving 5 Red Team memberships. The Nozzle, which one, I guess, is the question. Thank you for gifting 1 Red Team membership. Ryan E., thank you for becoming a Red Team member. And Apocalypse Cow gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And we have a question from a common name here, Musical Wolves, saying, is the Falcon 9 team coordinating with the Starbase team to lift Booster 10, but also do a Starlink right after B10 is lifted? Trevor, I don't think they're that coordinated with these, are they?
No, these will be 2 separate teams. So for the Falcon launch, there's mission control and launch control in Hawthorne and Florida, and then for the Starbase lifting, all of that happens from Texas. And I'm sure there's some support from Hawthorne, but those teams will be separate.
Yeah, I'm sure close eyes will be kept on both, that's for sure, but the team in the Launch Control Center is heavily focused on Falcon 9, and the teams down at Starbase are heavily focused on Booster 10 right now. I do want to hit a couple of Falcon 9 related questions here. This one, actually, I'm going to send it over to Julia. Jeremy is asking, with the new year so close and next year's launch cadence increasing, why no signs of a new drone ship?
Well, that's a great question, actually, and one I may be working on a video for-ish. But the short answer is there's a chance we might see more LZ-1 landings. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but there's been little tweaks to the performance of Falcon 9, and it could possibly be leading to maybe a Starlink mission at some point going RTLS with just a little bit less payload on board. So that would eliminate the need for a 3rd drone ship if more of them can come back to land.
Yeah, one of the things that we saw through the FCC permits is that they seem to be having the option, at least, of being able to do RTLS for Starlink missions. And while that means less Starlinks per flight, you can fly more often if you don't need to land on the drone ship that often, right? So if you don't need to build, and also it's cheaper because you don't need to build a 3rd drone ship or anything like it, right? Or have another team of people. That saves you a lot of trouble if you have it that way. So you're launching more satellites per unit of time, basically per week or something like that, whatever you want to choose, right? And you also can increase the launch cadence. You have it, you basically do it without increasing the cost, because you're not buying another drone ship, you're not having another team of people having to deal with it, you don't have another support ship or anything like it. You just have the landing pad there and land it back on land. The other thing is as well that the problem lately with these FCC permits is that SpaceX, and you're probably going to notice this over time that I'm going to be complaining about this, is that the SpaceX filed a permit that is very general for basically all Falcon 9 launches. And so now we don't know whether the next, the Group 6 missions, whether they continue after 638. They'll probably continue, but we don't know how far from 638. So they're probably going to be continuing and going down the rabbit hole kind of thing, right? But we're not going to know, because they have this permit now where they can launch any mission with Falcon 9, and they already have that communications permit in place, and so they can launch whatever, whenever, and they are already that approved. instead of being per mission. Prior to this, it was a per mission thing, and so we knew when certain Starlink missions were going to happen and things like that. But nowadays, that's going to change.
At the same time, it's going to be exciting to kind of see this change happen, too. So, hopefully, a lot more launches, and a lot more of them coming from Starbase as well. And maybe even from the second tower that's been proposed, which C6R1S, I believe, saying, do you think that the Starbase Tower 2 will have the stubby arms as opposed to the large chopsticks that we currently see on the screen, Alex?
Well, yes. So I actually think that what they're gonna do is move the chopsticks that they have already at Roberts Road, and those are stubby ones. So the only stubby things that we're gonna see in the near future with the Starlink, it's gonna be the arms. Hopefully. I wanted to make a joke about the stubby nozzle, but I guess that failed. But yeah, those arms that you see there, they are long. They don't need to be that long. And so for 39A and the third pair of chopsticks that they were building at Roberts Road, those are shorter than that. They are about half, just long enough to grab the booster and the ship.
Just a reminder not to skip arm day.
And didn't we just start seeing some of these assets moving today too at the turn basin?
Indeed.
So, Tower Piece 1, correct? And the couple tanks that once upon a time were at Boca Chica, and well, we're giving them back with a bow.
Yep, and again, you can watch all of that over at Space Coast Live, our 24/7 live stream from the Kennedy Space Center and some of the waters around it as well. So all of that exciting things. Let's switch back to some questions here about Starlink and things going on at Cape Canaveral. We have a question here, and I'm going to pose this one to you, Trevor, of what is the trajectory for tonight's mission?
Yeah, so also as typical for the Starlink Group 6 missions, it's going to go on the southeastern trajectory. So as you can see on screen right now, that's the trajectory that will follow, and then that blue dot is the rough landing area. So we'll go right past the Bahamas, are those the Bahamas? I think so. Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't screwing up my geography. And then further southeast. This is a change from how we used to see these missions go northeast, especially during the Starlink v1.0 days. And we believe that there are several changes, or reasons for why they made this change. The first is especially during the winter, the weather in the ocean seems to be a little bit better further south. And then secondly, this reduces the amount of conflict with planes that are flying into the East Coast, which makes the FAA happy because they have fewer diversions and whatnot that they need to make. So it seems like this is just kind of a better profile for both teams. And then there in the Indian Ocean is where the second stage will do a re-entry burn and splash down.
Exactly, and it's important to note that that is actually included in the official weather forecast. Reiterating that SpaceX did tweet that they are currently favorable for weather. One of the items that was a watch item was the booster recovery weather, which was listed as low medium. They do it on a low, low, medium, 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 high, high scale. And why do I feel like I just created a rap song there? But I'm also terrible with music. So, as we come now, T-minus 22 minutes, getting close to our favorite vent, but not there just yet. Silas asking, and Julie, I'll put this one over to you, since we've got everything still delayed that we have to deal with Falcon Heavy over at LC-39A. Does the fact that it's still configured for Falcon Heavy mess with any planned Falcon 9 launches?
Well, we don't launch terribly many Falcon 9 launches from 39A unless it's crew or CRS. And frankly, nothing's going to launch from that pad until this very important payload for the DoD, or Space Force, shall I say, it's gone. So it's not really going to mess with anything. The sooner the better, though, so that the next mission can proceed.
Yep, and for those wondering, that was the USSF 52 mission carrying, as you mentioned, OTV-7, which is the U.S. Space Force's mini space shuttle, space plane type thing that typically spends anywhere from 300 to 900 days in very unique orbits doing mostly classified items. We know that there are some seeds for NASA aboard this one to likely test their exposure to radiation, but other than that, a lot of it's a mystery, other than it will launch when it launches, which is hopefully sooner than later, after they started fueling it up and basically, or were about to start fueling it up and said, no, we're going to scrub today. But we will know that we are on track, at least for this launch, in about 7 seconds or so from now, as we get ready for the T-minus 20-minute vent, aka the best vent. And there it is. Trevor, what is the best vent?
The best vent is SpaceX purging the lines of the transporter reactor ahead of liquid oxygen fill, which starts on the second stage in about 4 minutes. So what they're doing right now is the transporter reactor for the second stage fuels the second stage, or fills the second stage one propellant at a time. So at T-minus 35 minutes, they begin loading RP-1 onto the second stage, which is advantageous to load first because it's significantly closer to room temperature. It's about a room temperature propellant. Whereas liquid oxygen is super cold and at about negative 200 degrees centigrade. So what SpaceX does is they want to load liquid oxygen as late as possible so that it doesn't warm up, keeping it nice and dense, increasing the performance of the stage. So what SpaceX is doing right now is they are purging the lines that liquid oxygen will be filled with nitrogen. So this makes sure they're nice and cool ahead of liquid oxygen flow through them, and then also that they're all clean.
And again, as you mentioned, that will be a good indicator of where we are in the fueling process. The fact that we've had that vent on time means that the rocket propellant 1 RP-1 load has completed there on that second stage. That is again a refined form of kerosene, as we anticipate at T-minus 16 minutes to be the start of second stage LOX load. That's liquid oxygen, or LOXygen as we like to call it here. Those are the propellant and oxidizer that will help fuel, or that will help run Falcon 9 all the way up into orbit. I do want to thank some more people here who've been super generous so far. Austin Skirvin with the $5 tip at tips.nasaspaceflight.com, another way of supporting us, saying this message gives 5 pun tokens to Sawyer. I think the streaming works for you. Really rock it. As in,
Oh
rock
my
it.
gosh. Oh
Hey.
my.
Austin's pun, not mine, but I will happily accept the tokens. Angela G saying, watching live, first time with my family. Well, hopefully you get to enjoy the launch. And then we have Bideford, a name that we see quite often here, gifting 10 Red Team memberships. Is that Nipnop? I apologize if I mispronounced that. Coming in with a super chat, no message, but still greatly appreciate the support. And Musical Wolves with the horrific image that is now planted in my head. Will there be a Stubby Raptor? Alex, please tell me this monstrosity isn't real. And that it can't hurt me.
No, there's not gonna be any Stubby Raptor. I know Max is currently very excited and everything. But no, Max, there's not gonna be a Stubby Raptor.
It is worth pointing
not
out.
for the time being, at least.
And it is worth pointing out that this Starlink mission will be using a non-Stubby Merlin vacuum engine as well. So no Stubby for tonight's launch, and hopefully no Stubby ever for
Yeah.
Starship.
Just in case. So this is fun because I've been trying to get like stats and details about the mission, things like that, written down for not only for us but also for us to be able to put it on the description of the live stream. And you can see it there if you open the description, and there's like another detail there, and it says Stubby nozzle? No. So from now on, you'll know ahead of time whether there's a Stubby nozzle or not, but you can still fight about that on chat.
they're already having a field day. I just see the word Stubby over and over again, and there's nothing
Someone
I can
saying
do.
stubby nozzles for ship 26. That's
Are
like
you guys trying to summon Max? Because I'm pretty sure you're attempting to summon Max at this point.
Blame the audience. I blame chat. Let's try and change topics here then. Trevor, I'll put this one to you. Michael is asking in regards to the Falcon mission here. What happens to the satellite carrier once all of the satellites are launched? Is there any chance they hit another satellite in the future?
I'm assuming by the satellite carrier, they're talking about the 2 tension rods that are on either side. And this is actually an upgrade that SpaceX made with these V2 satellites, which is very good from a space debris point of view. So the 2 tension rods on either side of the stack actually stay attached to the second stage now, and they actually have some Velcro, it looks like, on the stage that they hit to then stick in place. So those tension rods, which used to just be left in orbit along with the satellites, now fall back with the second stage when it conducts its deorbit burn. So those are not left in orbit at all, so there's no chance of them colliding before. Then with the Starlink V1 and V1.5 satellites, which are no longer being launched, I believe there are 4 tension rods, and those, as I was saying, completely deployed from the second stage. But thankfully, they were still in a pretty low orbit of around 280 kilometers or whatever, so they would only be up there for a few months.
And
the good thing now. Oh,
no, go ahead, Alex.
Well, I was going to say that the good thing now is that if they do indeed go to a higher orbit, there's not going to be any debris either way, right? Because, for example, for the Starlink Group 7-9 mission out of Vandenberg, they were aiming for a 336 by 345 kilometer orbit, which is about 50 kilometers higher than tonight's launch. So that mission goes higher, which will mean that with the previous tension rods, those tension rods may have been up there for a longer time, but with the current version of the tension rods and everything, they just come down with the second stage, and the second stage is deorbited on every Starlink mission, so like that's not a big deal then. It doesn't matter how far away you go. If you come back with the second stage and the Starlink rods, then that's okay.
And it's basically a rule now that any satellite that launches has to have a way to deorbit itself. Everything has to be done to try and mitigate any space debris as much as possible. We've now seen a company get fined due to space debris, so it's, as much as we call it space, and it goes on and on, there's not as much of it now around the Earth, so doing our best we can to be good citizens and not pollute low Earth orbit. I'll step off my, wheel off my soapbox here. We were talking about the weather, which, again, as we mentioned, is currently favorable. But, Julie, I'll put this one to you. Jonathan's asking, what do they do with the rockets when there's a storm before it takes off? Like a hurricane, tornado, or like we had just this past weekend, really bad thunderstorms.
Well, depending on what kind of storm it is, if it's your normal Florida storm, it's probably going to stay on the pad, just like our remote cameras tend to. If our cameras can take it, that rocket can take it. Now, if we're talking something like this last weekend, they can roll it back to the barn just to be safe. I mean, that does add more time to getting back into your launch cadence because you do have to roll out and reconnect. But I have a silly question. I don't even think that this rocket necessarily went back to the barn in this storm, but then again, we didn't have constant eyes on it. Falcon Heavy did roll back. Not entirely sure if that was weather, customer request, or just need to check out the rocket.
We actually kind of may have a hint as to why, because the transport director rolled out from the hangar empty at Launch Complex 39A. So what that means is that we basically have a rocket of the transporter reactor, Falcon Heavies of that transporter
Yeah.
reactor. And so it's when that happens, normally that means that they're working on the rocket, which is not a good thing. But also, again, it's good that they caught it and they're working on it. Like there's a bit of each side there, I guess.
I also
Very
think
true.
it's important to remember that this is only the 9th Falcon Heavy mission. Right, that's fewer Falcon Heavies than SpaceX launches in a month. Than Falcon 9s that SpaceX launches in a month. So it's like not totally surprising that they're still finding some issues on this vehicle. And since it's such an important mission, they're going to be very, very cautious and look at any piece of data, no matter how small it is.
Yeah, and it's also a very high stakes mission because this is for the military, and it's like the precious multi-million space plane, the X-37B, right? That's not a light thing to take.
And it's also very not light in terms of weight, as it's, I believe, one of the heavier Falcon Heavy payloads.
Yeah, it's about 5,000 kilogram launch mass, which isn't that much, right?
Yeah.
The Starlink mission, this is on the order of 18,000 kilogram launch mass. So the difference is that it's just going to a super high energy orbit, this Molniya type orbit, which is high inclination, highly eccentric orbit, whereas Starlink is going to a fairly low orbit, circular orbit.
Yeah, and I'm mostly sure. So because you said for Falcon Heavy, but I think the EchoStar 24 kind of got there because I think it was like 9,200 kilograms. It was a really big bird. That was a really heavy. I think it was actually the heaviest geostationary communication satellite ever launched. Might have been.
From what I understand, EchoStar 24 was the heaviest, but I would say it's one of the top 9 heaviest payloads that Falcon Heavy has carried. Anyway, do want to hit another message of support here. Katie coming in with the $10 super chat saying, for pun tokens and hashtag Uncrustables are raviolis. Oh, this is a debate that's been going on for quite a while of the whole different 6 methods of food of whether an Uncrustables, which is basically a Smucker's sandwich that is crimped together, counts as a ravioli. Trevor, do you have any opinions on that? Because I know Max's.
No. I don't know if I have ever had an Uncrustable.
It doesn't matter if you had it or not. Does it count as a ravioli is the question.
But ravioli implies pasta.
It doesn't have to, though, does it? It's just something that is stuffed inside of a dough, and bread is made from a dough.
I would say no, but I don't know.
Anyway. I'm scared to see where that ends up going in chat. But we are coming up now on T-minus 7 minutes and 45 seconds here. Trevor, we've got another big event coming up at T-minus 7 minutes. Do you mind just help giving us a rundown of what we can expect as we get into this kind of final part of the countdown here?
Yeah, so at T-minus 7 minutes, the Falcon 9 will begin engine chill prior to launch. And what this means is SpaceX will run a little bit of liquid oxygen through all of the turbo machinery on all 9 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. And what this does is it cools them down, because when at T-minus 3 seconds, the vehicle commands full propellant load through those engines for ignition, you don't want all of that liquid oxygen, which is really cold, as we were saying earlier, about negative 200 degrees centigrade, you don't want that to flash boil. And that could cause tons of damage to your engine, could lead to a hard start, could lead to the entire engine blowing up. So to avoid that, they cool the engine down before, which is what is done at T-minus 7 minutes. And then similar things are done to the second stage's Merlin vacuum engine. And that is a little bit later, and you'll hear a call out in flight that MVAC engine chill has begun, and there's even a little bit of chilling before that call out. Then at T-minus 1 minute is the next major event that we'll see, and that is when the Falcon 9 will enter startup. So this is when the vehicle takes control of the countdown, and this is also when Falcon 9 begins pressurizing the tanks for flight. 15 seconds later, at T-minus 45 seconds, the launch director will verify that the teams are go for launch, which will then be about the end of all of the callouts until ignition of those engines at T-minus 3 seconds. So this process takes on the order of 3 seconds. They will ignite the engines in pairs with about 100 milliseconds, if I remember correctly, between each pair. And this is done to just reduce transients on the vehicle. Once the engine controllers and the vehicle has all 9 engine runnings, it'll make sure that they're all healthy. And then if the entire vehicle is looking healthy, we'll command the launch clamps to release the vehicle. And that will allow for liftoff.
And one thing is that the shutdown sequence during MECO, it's also in pairs, like they shut down the pairs of engines. And you can see that sometimes when we have a very clear night like today, when you see all of those engines shutting down on Falcon 9, they shut down in pairs and then the center engine goes out. And for those that watched the second flight of Starship, since we're also having Starship here on the side, that was precisely what Super Heavy Booster 9 did. Instead of pairs, it was like 5, 5, 5 or something like that. And then he kept 3, the innermost 3 running. So that was really, really exciting to see on Super Heavy. But it's not the first time SpaceX has shut down, engines in that manner. And Falcon Heavy is even more exciting, how they shut down the engines on the side boosters for separation.
There we go. And we are now within 4.5 minutes until the scheduled liftoff here. So as we take one last look at Booster 10, we are going to switch our focus now to the Falcon itself. And Julia, I'm going to let you focus on your photography for this launch. And we are coming up on T-minus 4 minutes approximately until the scheduled liftoff of that Falcon 9 from the Cape. Once again, if you're just joining, that will be carrying 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites into orbit. It will be traveling southeasterly aboard B-1081, the veteran of 2 previous flights, that being Crew 7 and CRS-29. So that will mark this booster's first landing on a drone ship, which in this case will be a Shortfall of Gravitas, located a little over 600 kilometers downrange, as mentioned, to the southeast. So we should be coming up on that TE retract that should have just about finished up now. Trevor, what's the significance of moving that back by about 1.8 degrees?
Yeah, so this is just preparing it for launch. So this will make sure that the vehicle is standing on by itself right now. So since the tanks are more pressurized, the vehicle has enough structural support to stand vertically without the TE at this point. So at liftoff, we will see the transport director fall further back to over 45 degrees away from the vehicle. And this is in pretty stark contrast to the TE at Vandenberg, which retracts a little bit at about T-minus 5 minutes, if I remember correctly, and then just stays there for launch. So this helps protect the transport director against the vehicle's exhaust during ascent, which, quick disconnects and all that don't go very well with the exhaust of 9 Merlin engines.
Exactly. And Alex, the TE has been busy up until this point, getting the vehicle ready. What else has it been doing besides loading up the fuels here?
Well, it also purchased the inner stage on the booster and things like that. The Stromback does not fuel the booster. That is from the bottom. The launch mount basically provides all of the necessary fluids to load the booster and things like that. But definitely, we're gonna see some action there in just 1 minute and 54 seconds. If all goes well, we're gonna see that Stromback pull out at liftoff in just a few more minutes. And I just heard the call out that they have finished propellant load on the second stage, so the rocket is now fully loaded with propellants ahead of launch.
There you go. That means we should see one final vent coming off the vehicle, and then we will get ready to get into the nitty-gritty of the count. Again, as we were talking about earlier, at T-minus 1 minute, that is when Falcon 9 will enter startup. That is when all of the computers on board the rocket take control of the countdown and also have the ability, if needed, to stop said countdown. But of course, we hope it doesn't get to that. That is also the point when the tanks inside of Falcon 9 will be pressurized to their flight levels. And we should be expecting confirmation of that coming up very shortly, as we are now under 1 minute away from launch. We have the ground gas closeout, and we are about 45 seconds away, which means we're also going to be keeping an ear out for the official go for launch from the launch director. We have confirmation that Falcon 9 is in startup.
And they are go for launch.
There you have it. We are go for launch in just about 30 seconds from now. Once again, we will stop our discussions and commentary so that you can enjoy the sounds of the launch. Just be prepared. It is on a delay since we are a couple miles away from the launch itself. But we will stop our gabbing as we get close to there. About 15 seconds or so now until this vehicle lifts off. About 10 seconds. Keep an eye out at the base of the rocket looking for that green flash. That will indicate that the engines have started up and will hopefully be followed by the vehicle lifting off. We have engine startup and liftoff of Falcon 9 and the Starlink 6-34 mission. Go, Internet satellites, go. And everything looking good so far as we pass through max Q. That is the maximum aerodynamic pressure pushing down against Falcon 9 and the Starlink satellites, as we are now a minute and a half into flight. And so far, everything is looking absolutely gorgeous. Great color on the flame tonight, and especially now as the engines start to expand outward as the atmosphere gets thinner. Alex, we have a couple events coming up in quick succession next, right?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, we're going to see that MECO, main engine cutoff, then stage separation and MVAC ignition on the second stage. And shortly, like 20 seconds after that, we're going to see also fairing separation.
There we go, and a great view looking down the vehicle itself. You can see those folded up grid fins, which will unfold and help steer the vehicle once it re-enters parts of the atmosphere, especially when it gets thicker, prior to landing. But Max still tracking it from the ground there as we come up on what should be MECO any moment here. And we have, it appears, main engine cutoff any second here. There we go, main engine cutoff. Separation of the two stages. And ignition of stage 2 there on the right side of your screen. And there goes the stiffener ring. Trevor, what is that stiffener ring?
Yeah, so just going to point out the left view during that sequence of events is from the inner stage. So this is on the outside of the inner stage, and then there's a camera on the inside as well, which that center rod is one of the 4 pusher rods. And then as Sawyer mentioned, on the right we saw that little ring fall off of the nozzle of the MVAC engine. And this is just a ring that SpaceX keeps on the engine bell to help reduce vibrations during launch. and here we're coming up on fairing separation. And what this ring does is it reduces any of the vibrations, because what you don't want to happen is have any of the vibrations from launch reach one of the resonance frequencies of the bell.
I'm just
Because at that
interrupt a
point,
second, because on the left you could see those two pieces of fairing that separated from our ground view from Max. As we keep an eye there, again, some of that jellyfish view as the second stage plume expands. Sorry, just wanted to point that out.
no, good call. So you don't want the vibrations to reach a resonance frequency, which would mean that the bell could start vibrating a lot, which could crack it and possibly even completely break it. So that's just there to protect the bell, and then it's just a little piece of cork with one area that's a little bit thinner than the other. So as soon as the engine ignites, it just burns right off and falls away from the vehicle as expected.
Yes, we get a lot of questions with that. Is it meant to break off? The answer is yes. It also helps now with having almost 100 Falcon launches a year to be able to get to see that and showcase it too. On that first stage, if you keep an eye on the data in the bottom left, it appears like it is about to start decreasing in altitude, and it now is. So the first stage is now on its way back for a landing on the drone ship, a Shortfall of Gravitas, located in the Atlantic Ocean, while on the right side, the normal MVAC nozzle continues its burn to bring those satellites into their intended orbit, now at 11,300 kilometers an hour, 150 kilometers in altitude. So there are actually two burns to help slow this down. There's obviously the landing burn itself, but before that, Alex, we have the entry burn. So how does that help slow it down?
Yeah, so Falcon 9 will fire 3 engines in a 1-3-1 succession, basically igniting first one engine, then another 2 engines. And then the shutdown process will be they shut down those 2 engines and then the inner engine. So that re-entry burn, what it does is first, it slows down the booster through re-entry so that it doesn't experience a lot of heating and a lot of aerodynamic forces. But also, it protects the engines and the vehicle itself by, as you mentioned, fighting fire with fire. That engine exhaust basically prevents a lot of the heating from the regular air to go onto the booster. But it also creates a lot of soot to be deposited on the surface of the booster. So that is precisely what produces that sooty color on the boosters.
There you go, and we should be seeing that entry burn happening any second now. Keep an eye on the left side of your screen.
There we go.
And Sawyer, I have a question for you. If I wanted to have, let's say, a shirt, hypothetically, that would highlight how many engines are ignited right now, where could I find that?
You could find that at shop.nasaspaceflight.com at our launch entry landing merch. Very subtle plug there. I like it. And again, this burns approximately 20 seconds or so. You could see that soot that Alex was talking about covering the camera as the engine shuts down. And
as you can see on the telemetry there, as I mentioned, you know that I said it slows down a bit. It slowed down from about almost 8,000 kilometers per hour to 5,600. So that's a lot of slowing down.
I love you can see the atmospheric interaction there with the grid fins, those waffle-looking features straight ahead. It's just, that never gets old. And it's worth pointing out, the reason that we say approximately on those times is because even though we're given a rough timeline by SpaceX and we've seen enough of these, it is all controlled based off of data from on board. So if it needs to burn an extra second or two, it can burn an extra second or two. And that first stage landing burn should be coming up shortly, followed after that by SECO 1 second engine cutoff. That is the first time that Merlin vacuum engine will shut down. It will be reignited one more time after launch, about 45 minutes post-flight. So for now, we'll keep an eye on the landing itself as we approach T plus 8 minutes into flight here. You can kind of see some of the air going through those grid fins. It's hard to see in the dark, but now you should be able to see the light as we get ready to relight the engine 1 kilometer above the deck. Slowing down rapidly. There's the drone ship. Landing leg deploy. And another beautiful touchdown as booster 1081 makes its third landing and its first at sea aboard a Shortfall of Gravitas.
And that is SpaceX's 180 consecutive landing and then 254th total, which is just kind of amazing at this point.
It's unbelievable, the reliability of just, oh yeah, we're going to stick this on a barge in the middle of the ocean like it's no big deal. Absolutely beautiful. And it appears as if the second stage has shut down as expected. And just based off of what we've seen from past data from the Starlink missions, those numbers look good. Julia, how was that launch to experience for you?
You know what? It was absolutely spectacular. And you want to know why? Shout out to our Aussie viewers out there, because I actually had an Aussie watching his very first launch with his wife on his phone along with us. And what a fabulous launch for him to see his first one, because as he said, it was beautiful, it was loud, and as a local, I can tell you this one was loud.
Oh, you know it's loud when you hear the locals say it. Definitely have more of the experience of that, but that's amazing. And the fact, so the man was here in person and his wife in Australia was on via something like FaceTime?
Yep, they were FaceTiming, and his son was watching the stream, so of course an NSF patch went home with him.
Good. And that is a reminder that if you see any of us out in the wild, especially along the Space Coast, and I'm sure the Starbase team as well, we do actually have patches that we carry with us that are collectible as a token of, hey, I met an NSFer. So don't forget, if you see any of us, we're more than happy to say hi. We don't bite most of the time, so anyway. We did get some support while that was going on. Apocalypse Cow gifting 10 Red Team memberships. Sorry if you hear noise, that's Jake rubbing up against my mic. Joyce saying, keep up the great work, getting an item from shop.nasaspaceflight.com. And then we have Debbie Bruce saying, thanks for changing the bottom banner so we could see SpaceX telemetry. Thanks for taking viewer feedback. We always try and take viewer feedback. And then Anonymous, also with the item from the store, saying, lovely shot, go SpaceX, and Merry Christmas to everyone at NSF. We do still have a question in here that is about Starbase, and we will transition over to continuing our watch for the lift of Booster 10 down in Texas. But there is Das's favorite view, an empty launch pad. I mean, Alex, that looked as beautiful as always, and now we see the chopsticks there.
A non-empty launch pad, I guess.
Yeah.
I was going to make that joke that we're soon not going to see an empty launch pad anymore, because we also have Booster 10, soon to be lifted on the OLM at Starbase, and that's sort of the other action item that we're seeing tonight on this stream. And as you can see there, the stabilizer arms, I don't think they are fully engaged, because you can see some of that light still impinging on the booster fuselage, but they have gone in. But again, not all the way in, but they are more inwards, I guess, than usual is the word. So it seems like we are proceeding into those preparations for that lift. It may happen any minute now. We don't really know, because again, we have a new stand that boosters are being put on. That new transport stand that Booster 10 is right now on. And what we're looking for is for it to not be on that transport stand, but we don't really know how it's going to pan out, because it's a new one, and so things may change compared to how it was before with a previous version of this transport stand. So we'll see.
The real question is, are the snowmen still there?
I think they are.
I forget what they had for this morning. It was very early.
Yeah.
Booster 10, but it was also decorated.
Yeah, it was like a snowman, a reindeer, Santa. There was also a Christmas tree. They had lights everywhere. I kind of wish they light it up all like right now, but I guess they might have removed the lights just in case.
Yeah, 5
I don't know.
Morning, I guess.
Yeah.
Foreign object debris, aka trash that can get into places it's not supposed to. But before we wrap everything up there over on the Space Coast, do you have the numbers for us on this one of how many Falcon 9 flights that was this year, Alex?
Can you repeat that, please?
How many Falcon 9 flights does that make it this year, or Falcon
Oh.
flights in general?
That would be 92, if I'm not mistaken.
92 Falcon flights, 88 Falcon 9.
Exactly, and 94 total if you count Starship.
And it is the 18th, so there's still technically, what is it, 13 days left in the year?
There's no time though. We have already crunched the numbers between Trevor and I. And so there are at least a few confirmed launches. We have the Sarah 2 and Sarah 3 double satellite launch from Vandenberg in just a couple of days, I think it is. Not sure if we're going to be able to live stream that. We'll probably try. And then we have another Starlink in 4 days out here from the Cape. Then we have the Falcon Heavy. And then we have another Starlink as well from Vandenberg at the end of the year, around the 28th local, 29th UTC. Now, there might be a possibility for another launch that kind of slipped here and there. That's the Option 3 launch that we were expected to be the next one after this Starlink launch, but apparently it moved out of the way to instead launch 632. We don't really know when that launch is going to happen now, but it could happen the earliest, at least, on the 27th of December. So those are the remaining launches for SpaceX for the rest of the year. And if you count all of those, it gives you, I think, 98 Falcon launches. So not a lot of launches to reach 100.
I thought you were saying 98 was not a lot at first. I was like, okay, Alex, you can have high standards.
No, I meant to reach 100. You are still 2 away. I guess if you count Starship, you already have 100, but the SpaceX doesn't count Starship, so their fault. They're missing it, I guess.
This isn't a Falcon launch, but I think we absolutely have to talk about it in case you guys missed out the announcement today. But from Vandenberg, on the 20th, Firefly is launching, and we'll be having the coverage of that, so that'll be very exciting.
Oh yeah, that you'll be able to watch right here on NSF, so make sure you subscribe to the notification bell and all that stuff to stay up to date with it. And like you were talking about, the whole Cape launches, even if we don't get to stream all of them, there's always Space Coast Live, and our Cape Crusader team will be out there regardless, making sure that we get all the best coverage and some fantastic photos, like the team that was out there tonight, Max, who was on the cameras for tracking that beautiful launch, getting some of that jellyfish view, even seeing the separation of those fairing halves. That was absolutely gorgeous, so shout out to Max. Despite his takes on a certain nozzle, he does amazing work. And of course, not the only one with us tonight. Julia Bergeron was also with us out in the field. And Julia, I know you've been working out there on a picture, and take a look at it. Gorgeous work, Julia.
Why, thank you, Sawyer. Just a little bit more Christmas spirit for this one.
There you go. Well, I hope that people really like this picture. I'm sorry, Julia. I know you're probably cold and tired out there, but I had to.
Oh boy.
Oh,
That
no,
was
no.
so bad.
I've just got the you've got your pun tokens taken away grin on my face. That's all. You're good.
You're not mad, just disappointed.
That
Well-
was so horrible.
Well, Julia, we'll let you go then on that terrible note, but fantastic work as always. Thank you for being out there in the field for us and for your commentary tonight.
And thank you for having me enjoy your Starship coverage this evening.
Thank you. I got more spun tokens to use terribly, so good night, Julia. Oh boy, I'm embarrassed for myself on that one. Let's continue on here now as we focus things over to Texas, and as you can see there, again, keeping an eye on Booster 10, which we're expecting to lift onto the Orbital Launch Mount down in Starbase, Texas. I do want to finally hit this super chat from a while ago, just before launch, as we were starting to focus on Falcon with a Starship question here. And Alex, I'll put this one to you, saying, do you think the suborbital tank farm will be where the second launch tower will go at Boca? If not, where do you think it would go?
Oh boy. I don't really know what to think. That's the problem, because right now there may be so many movements of things everywhere. So, but I understand the question, because right now we are in the position where we're seeing SpaceX ready for a second Starship tower at Starbase, but also at the same time they have not expanded south, which is where we will have expected that second tower to appear. And instead they're removing stuff from the suborbital pad. So far they have only removed pad A, as far as I know. Like, the tank farm is still there, and everything. We just saw a test the other day of Ship 28 on suborbital pad B, so it's still working, right? But I understand it, and if you remove all of that, it is true that you can kind of fit a tower and an OLM right there on that location. And you wouldn't need any expansion to the south in that case, because, like, or do anything with the Army Corps of Engineers or things like that, right? Like, you probably not need anything much new. I mean, you probably will still need some kind of paperwork, because that's how paperwork works. when you put something new, right, and such new thing as a new launch tower with its OLM and everything, you probably will need some kind of paperwork, but it's easier if you do it on a land that you have already worked on rather than on an empty flat land. So I completely understand that question. And I guess my answer as to what do I think is that I don't know, but I'm very excited to figure that out during the next few months or even the next year. So we'll figure that out looking at Starbase and, you know, Starbase Live and everything.
Oh no, it means that we just have to keep watching Starbase Live here at NSF to find out? Oh, what a shame.
Yeah, like and subscribe and everything.
Here's another interesting question. It's also kind of along the lines of speculation. So Trevor, this one's over to you. Adam is asking, do you think, which one will happen first here? That they will static fire Ship 28 next, or spin prime booster 10?
I think I would vote probably static firing Ship 28. We've seen SpaceX just understands ships way better at this point than they understand boosters. So especially since Ship 28 has already conducted its spin prime test, I would not be at all surprised if this week we see a static fire of Ship 28. When I think spin prime of booster could also very easily still happen this week, but there is more work to do ahead of time. And the booster is a more complex system since there are 33 of those engines down there.
Very true. And again, we've already seen that spin prime. We'll see with that next static fire also how many engines they end up doing. Hopefully all 6, but it's SpaceX, you never know. Well, let's see what other questions we have here. Demian, while we're talking about testing, was asking earlier, do you think that the water deluge system will be tested once again after we saw it work in Flight 2? Again, I know it's more speculation, but Alex, what do you think?
I'm not sure if they're gonna do another test. They're probably gonna use it for the static fire. Like, no questions there, because they'll need it for the booster static fire. But you know, the test might just be that tested with the Raptors already. Because it worked. It seemed to work. And then Elon mentioned that they're not going to need any refurbishment of the plate. I think they haven't really done any sort of refurbishment on that hardware, as far as I know. So maybe it's just good to go already.
And as you're also mentioning there, the fact that if they do that static fire test, they're going to have to end up testing the system anyway, by running it at full force and hopefully full force and full length. Now, thank goodness Kevin isn't here at the moment, because Ship 26 with her own question asking, do you think Ship 26 will fly?
No.
Had to bring it up. Wow.
Yeah, right. Right now we think that, or we're pretty confident that Ship 26 was originally built just for SpaceX to learn how to better assemble these vehicles. So it had no purpose in mind, they just wanted to get their processes refined. And then later, it seemed like they realized, oh, we may as well do a little bit of ground testing with this vehicle. And that's why we saw them do that re-entry like static fire, single engine static fire on it, probably a few months ago at this point. But since it has been moved back to the production site, or I believe it's actually in the Rocket Garden, and we're quite confident at this point that it will not do any further testing, and it definitely will not, well, I don't want to say definitely, but it almost certainly will not fly on IFT-3 or any subsequent Starship flight.
And I do want to point out we do have an ongoing poll in the moment, so we're not counting Ship 26 as a launch, but do you think that the 2 Starship tests count towards the 100 launches this year from SpaceX, which right now, yes, is heavily in the lead?
This is the funny thing, because I do count it on my spreadsheet, but then SpaceX, even Elon mentioned the other day, I think it was like a 91 or something, talking about the latest launch. That was 10 days ago, by the way. It's kind of crazy to think about that. I mean, the latest launch prior to the one that we just saw 24 minutes ago. So, like, they do not count Starship for the total tally, which is weird. I mean, I understand it because it's an experimental rocket still, and it's not operational and things like that. But still, it's a launch, and it's actually, in my opinion at least, it's even more complex than Falcon 9. Because it's a way larger vehicle with many more engines, many more systems to take care of. I don't know. Like, it's kind of big deal. Literally big deal, because it's bigger.
There you go. Now, we talked about this at the very top of the broadcast here, but in terms of why this lift is kind of extra eyes on it, I guess. What has changed between Booster 9 and Booster 10 that might alter the lift procedure here? Alex, do you want to take it?
I'm currently looking there at that view that we have. It seems like they are approaching the vehicle with a lift. I'm not fully sure what they might be doing. But yeah, there are changes on this booster compared to the previous booster. For example, the common dome, the dome that separates the methane and the oxygen tank, is the elliptical dome, the one that is flatter. So that, for example, has changed. There are also upgrades, for example, even to the launch pad itself, where they have introduced things like new pumps, new subcoolers, and everything like that. We have seen new tanks also arrive, but I'm not fully sure if they're going to be implemented for this third flight, or if they're, just in the meantime putting them there and testing them, and then they'll plug it in. I don't really know, to be honest. They probably have plenty of time to add those in, but we'll see. Definitely, that lift is not fully encouraging, though. It looks like it's going to the quick disconnect.
That's pretty not good. What is good is the people that continue to support us, that we can bring you these live views of both a Falcon 9 launch in Florida and Booster 10 work down in Texas. And we can only do it because of the generous support from viewers like you. Thank you. Brian Green here. Sorry, I had to pull the PBS for the Americans. Brian Green gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Blackhawk NZ gifting 5 Red Team memberships as well. We also do have the member multi-view going on for this, and anytime we have these dedicated streams, there's a good chance that you could see that members multi-view up for what else is going on at Starbase, with a look at even more cameras than we already have on Starbase Live and on stream here. We have this question from Easy M, and Trevor, I'll pose this one over to you. They say, perhaps a very common question by now, but please indulge if possible. Hey, any question is a good question, because there's a good chance that someone else is asking it. Saying, how does SpaceX simulate cargo or payload weight during the test flights, or is that not a priority at this point?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are a variety of ways that one can do this. So I assume the primary question is for the Starship integrated test flights. And on those test flights, SpaceX does not have a payload simulator or a mass simulator. So what's generally done on the first flight of vehicles, we saw this on Falcon 9, actually not Falcon 1, and a lot of other flights, they don't want to risk any payloads yet since they're not confident in their vehicle reaching orbit. So they're just going to launch a mass simulator. So it's just going to be a block of concrete, a block of steel, something along those lines that's just heavy and not expensive to simulate that payload and therefore the forces on the vehicle. Some rockets take this a little bit further. So for example, on Falcon 9 Flight 1, they had a Dragon mock-up. It was not a full-fledged Dragon yet, but it was just kind of like a boilerplate which they used. And then Falcon 1 and a lot of flights these days have actual satellites on board. And then sometimes you'll just have the company having fun, like on the Falcon Heavy demo flight when Elon decided to launch his Tesla into a Mars crossing orbit. So it's orbiting around the sun, but the apogee, or not, whatever the apogee equivalent is around the sun, is above Mars's orbit. So it really depends and is up to the manufacturer of the payload.
Yes, and I'm still a fan of the Monty Python reference with the Wheel of Cheese. Just saying. The Cheese Shop is a great sketch. Probably a reference Adrian doesn't get, but for those of you that do get it, it is very funny.
What is that?
I also don't get it for what it's worth.
Really?
Oh, that's the payload simulator for Falcon 1?
Yeah, that's RatSat, right?
RatSat, yep. That's going way back.
That's the first thing that SpaceX put into orbit.
Was that Flight 4? Or was
that was Flight 4.
Yeah, because Flight 1 had actual payloads on it, right? And then Flight 4, they didn't have a customer since they had 3 consecutive failures, so it was just their own...
And the whole deal that there even wasn't supposed to be a 4th flight, too. And they were like, oh, we can scrounge together enough for a 4th.
This brings up a really entertaining story that Eric Berger told in his book about Falcon 1 Liftoff, which, by the way, if you haven't read, is just absolutely phenomenal. Berger did such a fantastic job with it. And one of the stories that he told in there was that on the Falcon 1 Flight 1, which had a pad fallback, they had a shed where they were storing this payload. And so they moved right from the shed onto the rocket and then launched it. And then after the entire flight, the payload actually ended up landing right on that shed again, which is just, kind of funny. Not intentionally, of course, but just a coincidence.
I think they were ready to shed that memory, and they still couldn't.
Gosh. Well, yeah. I feel like for SpaceX, they must look back at that really fondly, and at the time it must have been super stressful, but now they can just be like, haha, that was funny.
That's true. But yeah, you goo to believe I still love the Wheel of Cheese. I think it's great. Come on, you cheddar start laughing at that, please.
God.
Adrian, can we end the stream?
What, because I'm American? Would it be better if I was Swiss?
Do I have mutant powers for you?
Or is that a wholly different problem if we do Swiss?
Can we go to the next question?
We sure
People
can.
Are still doing, now they're doing puns on chat. See what you've encouraged, Sawyer?
I love it. Yes, it's great. And I see all the pun tokens coming in too, which I also appreciate. I love the one. Oh, he's gotten too powerful. Oh, just you wait. When it comes to cheese puns, I'm a monster.
I cannot bread these cheese puns.
Anyway, actual questions and support here.
Oh, I think I know what they're doing. Look at that. It seems
Patrick.
like
Sorry.
It seems like they're removing the Now I'm seeing the ticker.
Yes.
Seems like they're removing the pressurization equipment. So this is a funny thing. For Booster 9 and Booster 10, they do not have, I don't know if you remember, they had this sort of pressurization plate that used to protect the quick disconnect on the booster. Nowadays they don't have that, but like a few hours after Booster 10 arrived here, they put pressurization lines on the quick disconnect. And I think what we saw right now, because I think one of them is carrying it, one of those lines down to the ground.
So could that be a good sign then that maybe it's actually lifting as opposed to working on it?
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen here, that we're probably going to see a lift soon.
Wow. Well, hopefully soon.
Oh,
Let me-
jeez.
Ah! Oh, we're not starting that again. You do not want to fondue this over and over again.
Gouda, that hurt.
You Gouda pronounce it right, come on. Anyway, Crunch to Grace Hopper with a $50 super chat, very generous here, saying, did anyone else tally the 5 consecutive Falcon 9 landings last year that approached to the RT, then translated, then rotated to match the legs to the gaps in the circle before landing perfectly? Did that confirm the
What?
decision to proceed with catching starships? I'm not entirely sure of the question.
I don't get it either.
Unless it's talking about using Falcon 9 landing practice to practice the catch maneuver. I think I get what they're asking. They're saying that the Falcon 9 has practiced orienting itself, I guess, to where it touches down to see if maybe that's something they're testing to then be able to orient the booster so that it lines up with the capture points on the chopsticks for landing.
So
But
I'm
I
not.
think that happened earlier, the decision to go with catching, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I remember that being, like Elon mentioned that, I think, on December 2020, so that was 3 years ago.
I think they mean, though, were they using Falcon 9 by testing its rotation capability before landing to then test to see if, to learn ahead of Starship rotating to get into its correct alignment for catch?
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure what they're referring to, but one thing that I will note is SpaceX has already done practice with the orientation of booster on landings. So I'm actually not sure if they do it anymore. I'm pretty sure they do. But they used to land a certain booster 180 degrees differently than they would land all of their other boosters. And that booster is B1058, and SpaceX would land it such that when it was coming to port, the worm wouldn't be visible, so that the SpaceX logo would be visible on the public side of the port. So they've already shown that they have some control over that, but I'm not entirely sure, again, what exactly you're referring to.
I think that sums it up from my understanding. Regardless, thank you very much for the generous support and for the question. We have Hop Hayes asking, why don't they launch Falcon 9 from Starbase as well? Then we could theoretically get a triple header. Foggy Vandy and Cape Canaveral. I like the way you think on that Vandy part first, but Trevor, why not?
Yeah, this is a good question, and the answer is SpaceX actually originally bought land in Boca Chica for a Falcon 9 launch pad. The thing is, it wouldn't be super amazing, so it was going to be, because of where it is, it is pretty far south, but there aren't too many inclinations that it can fly to due to having so much land surrounding it downrange. So it would be pretty much exclusively for orbits to 0-degree inclination, which is pretty much only geostationary launches. So they were going to use it as their geostationary launch pad, which is just not super useful for SpaceX at this point, right? When they can launch a mission from Slick 40 every 3 to 4 days, and they can launch them from 39A, having another launch pad to support those 2 or 3 GTO missions a year that they launch is just not that helpful. So it really wouldn't make that much sense, and it's much better served for something like Starship, where they have a test program that they want to not interfere with their Falcon 9 launch cadence.
That being said, I wouldn't mind a Falcon 9 launch pad from Starbase. More Falcon 9 launch pads, more better.
There'd be so much better locations. Like, how about Slick 6 in Vandenberg? Just hypothetically.
Why not both? Why not both? See, now I can say this. ¿Por qué no los dos?
Yay! Like the commercial.
Exactly.
But also the whole trajectory thing with, you know, Mexico to the south and all of that. Yes, there's
It's
the...
okay. Come on.
I
They
mean,
can do a dog leg or anything. Yeah.
They have the trajectory currently for Starship, yeah, but, like, you're not really putting Starlinks in those orbits yet, so... Yeah.
It's okay. They actually have they have a shell. So this is a fun fact. They have a shell that is 33 degrees inclination, and they can reach it from Starbase without any sort of dogleg, and just threading the needle between Cuba and the Yucatan. Just saying. So they could launch to that one.
Yeah, that... Just don't veer off course in either direction, and you're fine.
Hey, look, Falcon 9 is way more reliable than Starship is right now. So, just saying.
Fair point. I see people asking if unpun tokens are a thing. They are not. Air
You can
attack.
ask Dr. Holly about that.
Hey, people are joining in. You got Airback with the generous support as well, saying, for Sawyer, not all math puns are terrible, just some. See the spelling? Trevor, you get that one as the math person?
I love it.
See, no minus pun tokens on that one. Come on, you gotta be on my side. That way we can divide and conquer. I'm just
I
multiplying how
see
bad this is.
all of you guys are plotting something, I guess.
Yes, we are the axis of evil. Or X, or Y, or Z. Anyway. Get Agrippa, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member. And Artemis asking, do you think they should cover the whole tower with Christmas lights? I mean, that would be pretty cool. We did see the drone show the other night, which was pretty cool. I believe that was posted on social media and may have made it into an update, right? Promise I watch all of our videos. We just post a lot of videos. Anyway. I've seen a couple interesting questions about this. While we had the Falcon 9 earlier, and we're talking about Falcon, and we look at Starship here. In terms of size, how many Falcon 9s do you think you could fit in a Starship? And also asking if Starship Booster is bigger or the entirety of a Falcon 9 is bigger. Alex is the size as the man with the charts. What do you think?
Well, so Booster 10 right now is about the same height as a Falcon 9 completely stacked with its fairing and everything. One of the things is that you could probably fit the second stage of Falcon 9 without the fairing, obviously, inside of the payload bay of a Starship. But then the whole rocket is just too big to fit inside of a Starship. Maybe if you put it inside like a Lego kind of thing in parts or something. Ooh, look at that. So that's another lift. And remember, the QD has 2 ports, I think, for pressurization. So if they removed one, maybe this is going to remove the other one. Maybe the other one is going to come out, and then we're going to see a lift.
That's the hope. I mean, because prior to going live for
right
the
now, we're
Starlink
seeing a lift, though, to be fair.
Oh, there you go. See, it's rubbing off. I love it. But we did, before the stream, hear the klaxon going off for about an hour, right? Which typically would indicate clearing the pad.
Yeah, but obviously there are still some people around. But I guess that cleared the pad of non-essential personnel, maybe? That was the deal with that? It's
SpaceX. It's all a mystery. Just when you think you know what everything means, all of a sudden, oh no, we got people out on a lift there, which hopefully will indicate that we are getting closer to an actual lift of the booster itself onto the orbital launch mount.
Yeah, and I just saw a question going real quick through chat about the pressurization. So this is a thing that is also kind of new as well. I think Booster 9 already had it, but now with Booster 10 and the new Transport 10 and everything, it's even better. That they don't use that's the pressurization system question. They don't use the you really got me there. They don't use the hoses for transport, but they use it before the transport. It was hooked up on the rocket garden, and then it was hooked up as well once it arrived here. So it looks like during the transport it didn't need the hoses, but then it did need the hoses, and after it was there for a while at the pad. It might be that maybe they thought the lift was gonna be so far away that they are probably gonna be staying on the pad for a while without any pressurization systems, and that was not probably that good of a thing. If you want to control the pressures, for example, to keep the thing in place, no buckles or anything like it, especially as you transition from the daytime to the nighttime, the temperatures change a lot, so the pressure inside of the tank might change. That's a good thing to have the pressure lines attached just in case, especially if you're going to take a while. But now that we're seeing them removing them, that's probably because the lift is going to be happening soon.
That's what we're all hoping for here. And again, this is just another step in the trend towards all of the Flight 3 hardware getting ready. And I know we just saw the Spin Prime the other day as well, Trevor, for Ship 28. So they're starting to get ship ready as well over there, right?
Yeah, actually, it was in, I believe, the middle of one of my finals. They spin primed Ship 28. So I don't know all of the details, since for some reason I thought school was a bit more important than tuning into our live stream. But yeah, they're progressing pretty quickly, and this is, like I was saying earlier, somewhat to be expected. SpaceX has now tested a lot of these vehicles, and they have a good understanding of what they need to test and how to set up the vehicle beforehand.
There we go. The puns keep coming in, and I can't say no to them. Musical Wolf saying, "Dear Algebra, please stop asking us to find your ex. She's not coming back, and don't ask why. Hashtag pun token."
We're just all algebros over here.
Well, if you need some support, there's always an algebra, so.
Oh,
Can you give me the definition of an algebra, though?
You have fun with that one. The back channel right now has gone absolutely nuts. The chat is very split right now. So, yeah. And Bideford, with his own mini pun in there, as Sawyer's one heck of a roll with puns, here's some extra token funds. Keep them coming. Well, thank you for the generous support, as always, Bideford, a name we love seeing here, and I will happily take and use those pun tokens, much to the dismay of Adrian in the back channel.
More importantly, those of us on stream, we have to deal with them.
You have to deal with me?
We have to deal with the puns. They're so tiring, Sawyer.
Well, here's the thing. Imagine the horror when I'm actually at the Cape for a launch and you can't just server mute or mute your ears or tune out. Poor Max and Julia, that's all I can say.
Adrian in the back channel says he's throwing tomatoes at us.
Ooh, yum. Who wants pasta?
I'm throwing lettuce just because I can make a
Sawyer's
salad.
let us make puns.
There you go. Beat me to it. We have someone saying, can we get a non-pungible token here? And
According to Patrick, we are -1 pun token for everyone on stream. Hey, I haven't made that many puns lately.
I don't know if it's better or worse, but my mom is now in chat as well, saying hi, so... I love you,
Sawyer's
Mom. Sorry.
what did you do to make him make this many puns? That's what we need to know.
I think she's gonna say blame his father. Yes. But yes, chat, you can say hi to my mom, who's also in here as well. Anyway, and also Airbertalk becoming a launch director member. Wow, thank you for the absolutely generous levels of support. Reminder, anyone that does Capcom level and above gets access to the NSF Discord, and then with a level like that, you get your name at the end of NSF Live. So lots of awesome things with that, and again, just your support allows us to be able to do these things and bring you these terrible puns but great late night streams. So thank you. Jake, I'm trying to read questions here from chat, if you don't mind. Also, Grammy says hi from chat. Let's continue along here. I'm sorry, I'm slightly off track there. Let's get back into things here. Titan3C asking, which Starship/Super Heavy concept was your favorite? Alex, do you have a favorite? Oh no, Trevor, go for it.
Tintin design all the way. I absolutely loved the look of those three massive landing legs and flaps. It was by far the best.
Alex, your favorite?
I like different things from different designs. That's the problem. I don't like the 3 legs though. The whole 3 fins, 3 legs. I totally didn't like that. That was horrible. But then I like, for example, that ITS, the Interplanetary Transport System. First, I like the name because it gets straight to the point. It's ITS, and then we had a whole system of talking about the booster and the ship and things like that. But then it's like it was 12 meters wide, which was larger, and the ship looked like a whale. I like that. It looks like an animal. It looks like a whale. I don't know. It's just more of a simplistic kind of view there, because obviously the current design is better because it's actually made and flown, right? Right.
Well, yeah.
The ITS that was PowerPoint.
That's like when people ask, "Oh, what's your favorite planet?" Earth, because I live on it.
Yeah, there you go.
I've got to go with the first initial intro of the BFR. It's so classic. The second I saw that, I'm like, okay, this is absolutely absurd and insane, and it's definitely not the final design as much as I hope it is. But yeah, I gotta. I'm sorry, it's still a favorite.
I remember before the first presentation about it, like a week before, I was talking about it with a non-space nerd that was a friend of mine, and I remember saying, "But this rocket is so big, like we don't really know how big because they still need to tell us the details. But it's gonna be so big and carry people to Mars and like be so powerful, right?"
Yeah.
And here we go. And 7 years later, it's there. Sounds great.
Can we all agree that BFR is the best name though? Like the big Falcon rocket was just so good.
It's the big Falcon rocket.
I mean,
we also had a whole. Yeah, because the funny thing is that for interplanetary transport system, we had the ITS ship, the ITS booster, things like that. And then when BFR came around, it was the big Falcon ship and the big Falcon booster. So we have BFR, BFS, and BFB. So it was super simple. Now it's like Super Heavy and Starship, but Starship is also the whole rocket. It's like it's a mess.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, it's come a long way. I think that's the best way to put it. We have some videos, including one that aired during the stream, of just how much this vehicle has evolved over time. Even just from, the first ones that we saw of SN1. It was just, things have evolved so much, and it's really cool to see now as we move on to Booster 10. And the different iterations. It's Ship 28. If we ignore Ship 26 in there, they're all amazing. Anyway, here's an interesting question from John Kerman. I don't know if we know the answer to this, but do the vacuum raptors on Starship have a stiffener ring similar to the one on Falcon 9?
Only for testing. But for flight, they don't.
And
So-
we're talking at McGregor testing, or?
No, well, I guess at McGregor they also have it because we've seen it, but also here at the pad, at Orbital Pad B, they have basically the hardware to be able to keep them in place. So I guess I could explain why they don't need it, and the reason is the nozzle extension on the MVAC engine. It's very thin. It's niobium. It's like a very thin material that they put there, and it's very thin because first of all, it doesn't have any cooling channels inside, so you don't need to make it thick to fit those cooling channels, and also because you can save as much mass as you can by making it thin, and so it works with it's called radiatively cooled engine. I guess that's the word. I've never been able to pronounce that correctly, but basically it cools down by radiating away that heat, and so that's why it glows and things like that. If you saw an RVAC though, you don't see that glow, and that is because instead it is actually cooled with the same methane that cools the rest of the nozzle. The nozzle extension is also cooled with that methane, and so you have super cool methane going through that nozzle, and it doesn't glow. It doesn't, obviously the inside does glow because it's expelling all of the exhaust, of course. But what I mean is like the outside is not that glowing or anything like it, and it's also much stronger. It's a thicker material. You have actual cooling lines going through the nozzle extension. So in that sense, you don't really need a stiffener ring. However, there's another whole thing, which is why they do have some kind of a stiffener during testing on the ground, and that is the flow separation. So you see, when we saw that Falcon 9 launch 55 minutes ago, as the rocket ascends, the plume expands, right? These Raptor vacuum engines are made to be able to take into account that expansion of the exhaust, and that's why it has that longer nozzle and that much wider bell at the end. The thing is, the Raptor vacuum engine is made precisely so that the exhaust on the ground, because the ground at atmospheric pressure, the atmosphere will basically pull in that exhaust and make it more like a jet, looks more like a jet rather than going and spreading out as it does in the vacuum. And so what it does is long enough to not harm the nozzle when it is tested at sea level, when that, instead of being spread out, it's rather a jet. And the reason why it doesn't get damaged is precisely because it is the right size for flow separation to not happen. And flow separation is exactly that effect of the exhaust separating away from the nozzle, and that creates reverberations and things like that. It just basically vibrates the whole thing and can damage the nozzle if it happened. You could see something like that with the Space Shuttle main engine, where at the ignition, during that transient, as it starts up, you can see in slow motion the nozzles wobbling back and forth, and it's super cool, but it's super damaging if you were to keep that on for a long time. So the thing is, for Raptor vacuum though, even though it might be able to be tested on the ground without those reverberations and vibrations and things like that, they still play safe with it, and that's why they put a stiffener ring while testing it on the ground, either at McGregor or here when it is attached to a ship, and then it is removed before they go onto a flight. I think I gave the whole explanation here, included with rocket science and stuff, but I think it was deserved for that question because it's very interesting.
Normally Trevor's the guy with the math and rocket science at this hour, but we'd still appreciate the in-depth analysis. I do have to address this because it's been going on in the back channel, and I have my say on it as well. Musical Wolves asking, can we add a physical pun token to the shop? First off, I want to shout out Dr. Holly, who actually gave me physical pun tokens when I saw her in person, so I've been burning through those. But, Adrian, think of this. A pun token pillow. Something that's kind of like soft, and then when people are really mad at me for a terrible pun, you can throw it at the TV, but it won't damage it. hopefully that will be at shop.nasaspaceflight.com soon. Right, Adrian? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I know he's going to say no, but I can always try. And then Airbertac with another pun and more support saying, I don't know why some people hate lazy people. They didn't do anything.
As a lazy person, I like this message.
You get that it's a pun, right?
I do get that it's a pun.
Cool.
Nah, that's my answer, because I'm lazy too.
And Apocalypse Cow, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And Angry American, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. Now, here's an interesting question. Trevor, I'll put this one over to you. Scott Dunn is asking, in terms of the ship itself, why don't they mold the Starship tiles in large sections as opposed to the smaller tiles?
Yes, this is kind of the whole design philosophy around Starship. They want these tiles to be easily replaceable. And what that really comes down to is they want to have as many uniform tiles across the ship as possible. So they don't want to be like the space shuttle, which had many different, slightly different tiles that they couldn't just put anywhere. They had to, if one broke or whatever, they had to go make exactly the same one and stick it there again. So by having these smaller tiles of a uniform pattern, they're going to get around that. That said, we do still see some custom tiles, especially around the flaps and whatnot, where they aren't uniform. However, of course, tiling the flap is quite a bit easier than tiling the entire ship of the entire belly of the ship, since the flaps don't pressurize and unpressurize. So yeah, it really just has to come down to the philosophy that SpaceX wants this vehicle to be rapidly reusable. And part of that is they can't spend a bunch of time making new tiles whenever they have to replace one.
Makes sense. And at one point, they were manufactured over at the Cape, and I believe they still have a manufacturing facility over at the Cape for some of that.
Yeah.
Here's a question from number 1 SpaceX fan, saying, is there any chance that several starships will be launched and linked in orbit to form a very large space station? Now, since I haven't brought it up yet, I do have to bring up Space Shuttle, because there was at one point a discussion of using the empty external tanks, the orange external tanks from Shuttle, to create a space station out of those. Alex, what do you think? I know it's all speculation, but what do you think?
It's orange. Yeah. So the that is an interesting question. I guess not straight away something that they will do, but it could be something that they could do later down the line. Once they have many Starship flights, once they have many ways to launch this thing off the ground and many launch pads, then you can start to do very fancy stuff with a Starship in terms of like the different variants. I think we did a video on the number of potential variants that they could do. That is a video that could probably even be expanded, I guess, even more, and have more stuff to talk about beyond that. But definitely very, very interesting, the possibilities that you could do a really big space station. Even if you create just traditional modules, I think there's a company, I think it's called Gravitas or something like that, might be that one, that is creating 8-meter wide modules for a space station. And so can you imagine, like, instead of the Starship itself, because it's also true that if you had the Starship itself, you also are lugging the tanks, and you're lugging the engines and things like that, you probably don't need all of that. But if instead you carry a big module on the inside and then join them together, and so because Starship is rapidly reusable in theory, right? Well, not is, but will be in the future, I guess. In the future should be rapidly reusable, so you can then launch all of these modules right away, right? And so it will be very cheap to launch and things like that. So I guess that's probably a way to also use the capabilities of a Starship instead of logging the whole thing up there, or even an expandable module that is 8 meters wide. without expansion, and then you expand it, and an inflatable module and like inflates, and it's, I don't know, 20 meters wide or something, some crazy number. That will also be the case. You can do so many things with that kind of capability. So that's a great question.
It really is. Thank you for asking that. And John Kerman also thanking you, Alex, for your very thorough answer on your earlier question about the tiles. Here's one.
That was Trevor, right?
Or I apologize. It's whoever it was. I think it was a combination. Thank you for the answers. It is a thanks from John Kerman to you. Angry American here with the question. Obviously, one of the big things that we've talked about with Flight 3 is now the completion of a fuel transfer test, potentially. So, Angry American's asking, what do you think are the chances of completing that test on Flight 3? Trevor?
Yeah, that's honestly a really fair question, and I must say, with how few details we have right now, I'm quite ignorant to the challenges and risks that are associated with it. Right, we've seen that even on the ground, transferring of these cryogenic propellants is not a trivial task in the slightest. Right, we saw many delays of SLS due to helium leaks. To be fair, hydrogen leaks. To be fair, hydrogen is even more annoying than liquid methane. But even with liquid methane, we've seen over the years SpaceX have quite a few times where they've aborted or delayed a countdown. So I think, it's obviously a very, very difficult problem, but what exactly are the challenges that they're trying to face up there? And it's kind of hard to know with how little detail we have. So, I think SpaceX generally is very good about setting reasonable objectives for some test campaigns like this. But they could be, it could be too complex of a test that they have to repeat multiple times. We've seen that happen with getting to orbit with Starship and on the suborbital flights. So I really don't have a good way of quantifying that. But hopefully it's successful. It would be great if SpaceX is able to rapidly move through some of these refueling challenges.
Exactly, and I mean, we had a great show of NSF Live talking with some of the people from the HLS program, the Human Landing Services, getting people back to the moon. And obviously one of the things that Starship will have to do in orbit is refuel. So obviously we're talking within the vehicle for the flight test, but eventually between vehicles. So it's really getting exciting, and it's really important, I think, now that we see these tests, and as you mentioned, see the progression of that fuel transfer process. And if you didn't see the Intrepid show that DAS had this weekend, Alicia was there. I believe it was really, really good. So definitely check out NSF Live from this past weekend. So for those who are kind of just joining or have been chilling with us, wondering why we're staring at the bottom of Booster 10, Alex, what have we heard and seen so far up to this point?
Yeah, so we've had the removal of one of the pressurization lines earlier, and then the lift came back to remove the other one. I think it already removed. I don't see any activity, at least for the last 4 minutes, around the booster and the stand, so we're probably in a position where they may be able to lift soon-ish. We'll see. That is sort of the big question, and I think that's been pretty much one of the big questions with booster lifts, where it's rather hard already during daylight to see people around the booster, what kind of work they're doing, but now in nighttime it's even harder. And then we have the tower flashing and everything. Say cheese, by the way, because they're taking pictures of you. That's the joke that I usually run. So yeah, the whole thing is that we don't really know how far away we are really from that lift. It may be minutes or maybe hours. Let's hope not, right? But all indications right now point to that lift being soon. It's just that quantifying how soon, it's kind of hard. One of the things that changed now with this new transport stand is that we also don't see people working on unplugging the clamps, because the previous transport stand for boosters, it had the rest points, right, and then on top of that it had clamps. So the rest points and the clamps had to be removed and unbolted, and then the booster was still resting on the transport stand, but just on those arms, and then the arms will pull out as the chopsticks will grab onto the weight of the vehicle, and then they will pull out and the vehicle will be set free. This transport stand, though, is more closer to how the clamps work on the OLM, where they are just actuated, remotely, so you can actuate and open those clamps right away without really needing manual unbolting of those clamps. And so they could unclamp the whole thing and then move away the arms once the chopsticks carry the full weight of the booster. So that's a nice thing, because we don't really need to see people going around the stand for that. It also means that maybe we won't see any clamps going out, because the thing with the previous stand, I guess not clamps, but more like the resting arms for the booster, those will pull out on the previous design, and we were able to see that pulling out as the booster was being set free. Again, this is a new transport stand. I really don't know if we're going to see that today. That will be a very great thing to figure out in just a few minutes. So, SpaceX, let's figure that out. Come on.
From your mouth to the chopsticks, yes, hopefully. Good recap of where we are as well, so thank you very much for that in-depth there, Alex.
Thanks.
And, of course, we have AirBatak with even more generous support, asking if we have a liaison with SpaceX or Starbase to ask these types of questions. I think the best way to put it is we all have good sources. Now, for those who were here earlier, by the way, following the Starlink launch, as you can see on the screen, we mentioned that there was a second burn coming up. That second burn and the separation was completed, and we have official announcement there from SpaceX of successful deployment of those 23 Starlink V2 internet satellites. Ooh, fancy transition.
I bet Patrick wanted to do that.
Well, I'm glad he did. But yes, in terms of our sources, I mean, Alex is a wealth of information on his own, and I know he's probably got his peeps that help out.
Yeah. No comment.
If nothing else, it's always good to check out L2 for some good information as well, which you can join. You can even join through shop.nasaspaceflight.com, become a member of the L2 forums, which is an addition to our currently free version of the forum. All you have to currently free, our free version, it'll stay free there, of the forum. And then if you so choose, you can buy into the L2 forums and get access to exclusive photos, videos from us, historical photos and documents. It's all fantastic stuff in there too, so make sure you check it out. And again, a reminder, when you do sign up, if you sign up through shop.nasaspaceflight.com, make sure you get that free account first and have a username, because we will need that username to give you access to L2. Here's a question from Falcon Heavy, ironically, who's asking, which future booster or ship do you think will have Raptor 3s? Trevor, we'll start with you.
Oh boy. Yeah, we're really not sure at this point. Right, Elon talked about some of the improvements that are coming on Starlink, or on Starship V2. So I have Starlink in my mind for some reason. I wonder why. And he was he was quite vague on what those changes are. So he mentioned just some fairly basic stuff, like holding more propellant, reducing dry mass, and improving reliability. Which, to me, it's like, well, I'm glad you're not making the ship less reliable and you're not making it way more. So it's not the most useful tweet of all time. So we're really not sure if part of those upgrades includes Raptor V3. To me, it seems unlikely. It seems like it would be pretty soon to switch to, a new version of Raptor that just hit the test stands. I think it was in August or so Elon first tweeted about it. So yeah, I really am not sure. However, my guess would be, we're probably at least a year out from seeing those on vehicles flying. However, SpaceX moves quickly and could very easily prove me wrong.
Alex, your thoughts?
Well, I'm not fully sure when we're gonna see that. Probably a booster in the 20s might be the case, unless they give us the surprise and they come back, with like booster 13 or booster 14 having Raptor 3. I'm not fully sure though if we're gonna see it that soon. We'll see though.
Yeah, my prediction would be sometime in 2025. I think they've got a whole bunch of Raptor 2s. I'm sure they're going to want to fly out a bunch of those first, especially before getting to the version 3s. That's just my guess, my prediction, and if you have any thoughts, definitely let us know what you think in chat. When do you think we will see those Raptor 3s? Here's a question from John Smith. We may not be able to hear it in our back channel here, but all of you have been hearing all of the venting going on stream. What is the venting that's going on? I think we've even seen a little bit of visible venting as well. Alex.
I've actually have been listening to that because I have Starbase Live on another tab. See, that's always smart, having a Starbase Live on another tab and kind of look at other stuff. But yeah, I have been hearing this venting for like hours already. It seems like even before the klaxon began. I don't even remember. I think it was like 3 hours ago that the klaxon began. I think it was 8:16 or something, and we're already 11:16. So yeah, even before that, I heard venting. I'm mostly sure that it just has to do with the tank farm activity and things like that. Some people were saying that the booster QD might have been tested as well. I didn't see it though, but it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, right? Just because I didn't see it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It's just probably that I wasn't paying attention enough to that. And then also there might have been, because I think our microphone is close to the tank farm, like it's especially close to places like where they unload the liquid oxygen and things like that. So maybe we're also hearing that. I'm not fully sure though. But ventings, like I'm guessing if Adrian will be here, he will be saying there's a lot of venting from everywhere at Starbase. Once you go there, you see lots of vents everywhere. But yeah. Adrian says yes. Yes, he will say that.
Let's see. Yeah, I guess Ship 26 is asking an interesting question of how many starships do you think they will launch in 2024? I'm thinking we're probably going to see like on the order of 4 or 5. Alex, what do you think?
I will say that no more than 5, and it has nothing to do with the whole PA thing, whatever. Because I have different opinion about that, but I may get into that on another rant. But yeah, I just don't see more than 5, precisely because we're gonna see the end of version 1 of a Starship, and then we're gonna see perhaps a stand down to transition to version 2. We'll see though. So that's why I'm not projecting a lot of launches. Like maybe 3 more V1s, maybe 4 at most, and then V2.
You know, when you put the numbers like that, it makes sense to kind of go with that 4 or 5. I would like to think 6. I would hope for 6, one every 2 months. But like you mentioned, if we weren't switching V1 to V2, I would be more confident in 6. So I think 5 is safe. Another thing that we've been talking about in terms of speculation here, we know that they're going to be upping the number of Raptors inside of the ship itself. Daniel, let's see. Yeah, Daniel asking, when or if does Starship go from 6 to 9 Raptors on the ship? Alex, what do you think?
That's another thing that we don't really know when it's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's speculation hour.
Exactly, right? It could come in with version 2 though. Like that could be one of the things that we might see with version 2, where they introduce the extra 3 Raptor vacuum engines. But again, until we actually see some of that hardware, and now with the Star Factory, that's probably gonna be more complicated to see. So I don't really know. It could be again with the first V2, you know, with once we see version 2 come up, which might be ship 34 or ship 35 or somewhere around that. Maybe by then we'll see those 3 extra Raptor vacuum engines.
Trevor, when do you think that we'll see 9, if we'll see 9?
Oh boy. I mean, as Alex always likes to bring up, this is something that Elon has been talking about on Twitter and /X for like years at this point. I think he probably first talked about it like 3 years ago or something like that. And still we haven't, you know, seen any hardware that would be for 9 engines on the ship. So yeah, it seems like V2 would be a good time to do that, but also I'm not, you know, SpaceX can be really weird at times, and you know, it's very possible that they for some reason don't want to do it at that time.
Yeah, I think that we're probably still farther away from that than we are from seeing the rest of the V2 modifications. Again, not exactly knowing what those V2 modifications are yet, so it's potential, but I think it's going to be a couple flights after that, and right now they're just going to perfect the 6-engine method. But we will have to wait and see. Just as we are continuing... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one thing that we could... that could be a good indication is if Starship V2 is longer and holds more propellant, then I would be pretty surprised if we didn't also see an additional 3 engines. And the reason why I say that is just because the thrust-to-weight ratio of Starship when it first ignites its engines is already kind of low. So if they added more mass but not more thrust, I think that could, you know, hurt performance by a non-trivial margin. So I think that would make a lot of sense to then add those 3 more engines. But again, that's all speculation.
As I was saying, we will definitely have to wait and see, just as we are waiting to see this booster lift. And I think the best place that we can all wait to watch this lift will be over at Starbase Live, our 24/7 camera feed that we have over on our YouTube channel here. So, I think we'll toss things over to SBL. The klaxon went off. We had seen things getting ready for a lift, but that lift seems to be waiting just a little bit longer. So I think that'll end the dedicated commentary portion. But I want to thank everyone who joined me here tonight. Alex, thank you for being with us.
It's always a pleasure. We had a launch, but seems like that lift is taking a little bit longer than we thought.
Yeah, and right now it's getting hard to lift our eyelids, I think, let alone lift a booster.
I was gonna make a lift pun on my thank you. Darn it, Sawyer.
Oh, you can still make one. Thank you for joining us, Trevor.
I was gonna be like something, now I can go lift myself into bed, or I don't know, it doesn't work now. But
See, speak for you, because I slept before the stream, so I'm resting.
but it's been a pleasure. Thank you, as always, everyone, for joining and asking such insightful questions.
Yes, and thank you to Patrick for pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and bringing 2 streams into 1 stream tonight for everybody. That is very much appreciated. I have been your host, Sawyer Rosenstein, and it's always fun to cover Cape and cover Starship, let alone both at the same time. But let's all head on over to Starbase Live. As always, thanks for watching, and as Das likes to say, later nerds.